So we're going to pick up talking about unemployment where we left off in the last video, and we're going to talk about the labor force participation rate, the adult population. We're going to look at some data from 2012 BLS reports that were published then, and then we'll also get into sort of why we see longer lasting bouts of unemployment today than we have in the past. Okay, so we'll get into sort of the determinants of the length of unemployment as well. So a couple more terms that we want to go over. We have what's known as the adult population. Okay, and this is anyone over the age of 16. Okay, this is everyone in the country over the age of 16. Okay, and what this allows us to do is calculate something that we call the labor force participation rate. So the labor force participation rate is equal to the labor force, right, which again is the number of unemployed plus the number of employed people divided by the population. Okay, and what this tells us is the percentage of adults who are considered in the labor force in one way or another. Okay, so the higher this rate, the greater the participation is. So if it was 100%, what this would mean is that everyone over the age of 16 in an economy is either considered employed or unemployed. And if it was 50%, that means that half of the people over the age of 16 in a country are considered either employed or unemployed. Okay. For 2012, this figure at the national level was 63.7%. Okay, so it's not bad, but it's certainly not terribly high. Okay, so the national average for 2012 was 63.7%. At some level, this is a very useful measurement. It tells us sort of the willingness of the population to work. Right, the higher this number, the more willing the adult population is to work. Right, and so it can be a very telling number, especially when we combine it with the unemployment rate. And so what I've done is I've printed off a table covering different demographic groups and their unemployment rate and the labor force participation rate. And for some reason my printer is printing things askew, so that's why my page is askew here. So if you look at the data just very quickly, and just to clarify, I don't cause these things to be true. I'm merely reporting what we see. Okay, if we look at this for adults between the ages of 25 and 54, there seems to be a marked difference between white unemployment and black unemployment. And there's a marked difference between the labor force participation rates too, right? At least for men. For women, it's about the same, right? They're only 1.5 percentage points off. But for males, white men participate in the labor force at a much stronger rate than do black men, and white male unemployment is far lower than black male. So what this says is that more white men are participating in the labor force, and they're having an easier time finding jobs than their black counterparts. For teens, we see something a little bit interesting. So for teens, again, you see the unemployment rate for white teens is about half that of black teens. And you see white participation rates are higher across the board than black participation rates. But what you also might notice is that female unemployment is lower for both whites and blacks, and their participation rate is higher for both whites and blacks. And so what these two numbers can do, what they can say to us, is they can point us towards problems in society, right? So taking just these two numbers alone can tell us a lot about problems that are plaguing society. So one issue that we might want to raise is, why is the labor force participation rate between for children between the ages of 16 and 19, why is it so low? One answer might be that they're in college, so maybe this is only capturing the 18 and 17-year-olds and the 16 and 17-year-olds, and so this is ignoring the 18 and 19-year-olds that are in college. But it seems like these numbers still seem pretty low for just that. Okay, we might also look up here and say, okay, well, why is it the case that women participate in the labor force less than men, right? What's driving that? And why is it the case that white labor force participation rates are basically higher than black labor force participation rates? So what is it that's preventing African Americans from entering the labor force? Okay. We can also ask questions about the unemployment rates. Why is it that unemployment for African Americans is significantly higher than for white people? And so these are, excuse me, these are hugely important questions that we'd only really get a sense of, or an objective sense, I guess you could say, by looking at data like this. It's one thing to say that there is sort of there's an advantage of one race over another, but when you have the evidence sitting right in front of you, there can be very little denying of it. So these sort of things, these two numbers alone, especially when we break them down by demographics, provide us with tons of information about what's going on in the world today, right? So, it can help us sort of steer ourselves towards policies designed to actually help people, okay? And given that the goal of policy is to help people, having the data in front of us to know what problems are plaguing society helps us do that as well as we possibly can. Okay, so let's turn to sort of determinants of the length of unemployment. Right now, I'm sure that we all sort of agree that being unemployed is no fun. We want to see less of it, right? And we certainly want to see people who are unemployed finding jobs more quickly, okay? And so what we want to do is analyze or think about what sort of helps determine the length of unemployment, okay? Now, obviously, there are a lot of factors that go into this, okay? But we're going to boil it down to two overarching factors, okay? And in order to think about this, what we need to do is put on our really valuable hyper economist hats, okay? So we need to speak about these things as objectively as we possibly can, okay? So we're gonna get rid of feelings, senses of feelings in this part of the lecture. And we're going to talk about these things sort of in an objective way, okay? And so there are two sort of broad overarching categories that we can think about. So the first one is the cost of finding a job. And the second one is the cost of being unemployed. Okay, and so let's talk about these sort of one by one. Now, a lot of times, as I'm sure several of you know, it can be really hard to find a job, right? So for number one, right, sometimes it's just hard to find a job. Okay. And in fact, the 2010 Nobel Prize in Economics was awarded basically for saying exactly this, right? It's hard to find a job. Okay. These costs, so some of the costs included in this category are things like interviewing, right? So you have to go to a place to interview. You have to spend time interviewing with a person. You have to wear a clean suit or a new dress of some sort. You have to print your resume. All sorts of things that you have to do. But what you also have to do is find a job to apply to. Okay, so sometimes just knowing about a job opportunity takes time. Right? So you have to search for jobs. So websites like Monster.com, Indeed.com, these types of places help you to find jobs that you can apply to. But then you still have to actually go through the application process. Okay? But on the other side, employers also face a cost of finding an employee, right? So it takes time for them to find someone that they want to hire, right? It's one thing to say that there are lots of people available, but it's another thing to say that you found the right person, okay? So while you're being interviewed, right? So companies have to find you, right, if they want to hire you, and that takes time and effort. But once they've found you, they have to interview you. Those take time, right? That takes time out of their day, and during that time, they can't be working, right, because they're talking to you. And so if you think about it, companies are going to want to minimize the number of candidates that they interview, which is why, if you've heard from your guidance counselor or some sort of a career fair worker or anything like that, if your resume contains typographical errors or grammatical mistakes or anything like that, it gets thrown away. And the reason why is because companies correctly, in my opinion, reason that if you can't be bothered to double check your application for these types of mistakes, then they shouldn't be bothered to interview you. Okay, so interviewing on the employer side is also costly, and they want to minimize the number of interviewees that they bring in. Okay. What about the second type, right? The cost of being unemployed. Okay. What does that mean, right? So when you don't have a job, what are you also missing, right? You're missing an income. And this can be incredibly painful, especially in today's world where somewhere around 60% of people are living essentially paycheck to paycheck. So imagine what these people's world would look like if they suddenly lost their job, right? Other studies that I've seen suggest that for people under the age of, I want to say 35 or 40, something like 75% of us are one $500 bill away from financial ruin. So if we happened to have a bill that came due for $500, or if we had to pay a $500 bill tomorrow, most of us could do it, but it would wipe us out. Okay, and so in that world, the cost of being unemployed can be very, very high. Now, one interesting thing that we should note is that today people tend to be, I should say, unemployed for much longer than before. Okay? So if we know that people tend to be unemployed for much longer than before, how can we explain this? Okay, so there's two ways that we can explain this. We can explain it in one way as saying the cost of finding a job or an employee has risen, meaning that it's harder for people to find a job, or it's harder to find someone to fill a position. So we could say, hypothesis one. The cost of finding a job has gone up. Okay, so it's just more costly to find a job. That's one hypothesis. But there could also be a second hypothesis. And that could be that the cost of being unemployed has fallen. Okay? So it could be the case that being unemployed is now less costly than it used to be. Okay? Now, we know that either one of these could have happened, or some combination of the two. But one thing we might want to question is which one of these is bigger, right? Is it the case that the cost of finding a job has gone up dramatically, or is it the case that the cost of being unemployed has fallen dramatically? These are empirical questions that we can generate just from seeing sort of this observation that people tend to be unemployed for longer than before, and understanding just these two broad, I want to stress again that these are broad categories, these two determinants of the length of unemployment. So if we see longer unemployment, then we know that one of these must have changed. Okay, and so let's think about what those things are. Okay, so in terms of the cost of finding a job, okay, there's lots of things going on in that sphere. Okay, so for one, it is true that manufacturing jobs are almost certainly on the decline, and so it could be, right, so let's do this. The cost of finding a job increased. All right, we'll ask that question. Okay, so on the positive side, right, manufacturing jobs are declining. All right, maybe. All right, I haven't looked at the data, so it could be true. It could not be. It might not be true, but let's suppose that it is. Right, so manufacturing jobs are declining. So there's fewer manufacturing jobs than there were before. We could say things like college is more expensive, or less affordable. Right? But even college graduates are having a hard time finding jobs these days. So I don't know that increasing the cost of, or the increase in the cost of college has driven this too much. But then on the other side, we have, so I'll put minus signs, websites exist. Right? So monster.com would lower the cost of finding a job. Indeed or LinkedIn, and even Facebook to an extent are all websites that can be used to help you find a job. So websites exist to help find jobs. Okay. There's also, temp agencies. So I'm not totally 100% convinced that the cost of finding a job has increased, but it may have. It's certainly a hypothesis that we could test and we could look at, right? And we could investigate this and see sort of if this is what's happening. Okay, but then we can also think of the other side. The other hypothesis is that the cost of being unemployed has fallen. Right, and we'll put a question mark there because this is a legitimate question. Okay, and so let's think about factors that might influence the cost of being unemployed. And so one of these is unemployment insurance. Right, this is sort of the overarching thing that people talk about when they talk about welfare. Right, so when we talk about people receiving unemployment checks, this is what we're talking about. Okay, so people who are unemployed can file for unemployment benefits, which help to cushion the fall of their unemployment. But the caveat here is that having greater unemployment insurance can make unemployment less painful and as a result make it longer lasting. Now, there are benefits and costs to this. So like everything in economics, we have, on the one hand this and on the other hand this, okay? And so with unemployment insurance, I think it's fair to say that the greater the unemployment insurance is, the longer a person will be unemployed. But one positive thing is that the unemployed person can take their time and find a job that they are uniquely fitted for, or uniquely suited for. And so they can take their time to find a good job or the best job for them instead of having to settle very quickly on whatever job they could get, right? So we could imagine an engineer who loses his job and without unemployment insurance and given a certain financial situation, might have to accept a job at Walmart as let's say a stocker, right? So he stocks the shelves at Walmart, and we can imagine Walmart employing him for 60 hours per week, right? Because they need him to work, and as a result, this engineer doesn't have any time to find a new job or interview for a new job, and so gets stuck at Walmart. Okay, we can imagine that. And so unemployment insurance would help this person sort of cover their costs of living until they were able to find a new engineering job where they would be better suited. Okay? But we can also imagine people who take advantage of these programs. We can imagine someone who does the bare minimum to at least look like they're applying for jobs and really is just taking the free money and existing. So we can imagine unemployment insurance being both a benefit and a cost. Okay, so this isn't to say that unemployment insurance is universally bad, but we should also recognize that it is not universally good. It can be used for very good purposes, but it can also be abused. And unemployment insurance, we should note, probably contributes very small towards the overall unemployment rate, but there are, certainly things that contribute greater to it. But unemployment insurance is one thing that is probably contributing to it. Another thing that we can think about would be sort of the rise of labor unions. Right? Labor unions, what they sort of attempt to do is secure higher wages and better working conditions for their members, and sort of they want to represent their workers in a collective fashion to the employer. And the idea is that by doing so, they restore sort of a balance between the employer and the employees, right? And so those are certainly benefits of labor unions. But one cost of a labor union is that it reduces the number of people who are able to apply for a job. Okay, so labor unions might actually cut against or make finding a job more costly. So actually this probably belongs up here. By restricting the number of people who are allowed to apply, right? So think about going to work for General Motors in 1985, right? You had to be a member of the United Auto Workers Union, and if you weren't, you couldn't work there. Okay, Ferris State University, prior to the laws in Michigan changing, you had to be a member of the Ferris Faculty Alliance in order to be a faculty member at Ferris State University. And so they prevented non-FFA members from being faculty at Ferris. Okay? Now, does this cause massive unemployment? Again, no. Okay. Other factors. I'll lump these into other factors. We could have minimum wage. legislation, right? Minimum wage legislation, as we've discussed earlier in the semester, and I think it was week 3 or lesson 3, minimum wage legislation makes it more expensive to hire workers, but more workers are willing to work at those higher wages. And so what we see is a surplus of labor, right, where the quantity supply exceeds the quantity demanded, and these people here would be classified as unemployed. Okay, so minimum wage legislation can make it, I don't know if I would quite put this here. I definitely wouldn't put it here though. So I guess, yeah, I guess it should belong in 1. So minimum wage legislation could belong up there. And then the other one would be sort of efficiency wages, which again, I guess would fall up here. So minimum wage legislation also belongs up there, and efficiency wage efficiency wages belong up there as well. And what an efficiency wage is it's basically the idea that sometimes it makes sense to overpay your workers, right? Sometimes it makes sense to overpay your workers, right? And in doing so, you can avoid retraining, or rather training new people, right? You can avoid having to monitor, okay? And so there's lots of factors that go into explaining why sometimes it makes sense to overpay your workers. And this can, broadly speaking, be lumped in up here because it does sort of act a lot like minimum wage legislation in the sense that you're paying people more than they're worth. And in that sense, there's going to be fewer jobs available. And so I guess these two factors combined, the cost of finding a job increasing and the cost of being unemployed falling, can really be powerful explanations for what's going on in the world, right? And so these types of questions, like what is causing unemployment to last or to persist for so long, are hugely important, right? One thing that we want to make sure that we don't do is make people's lives worse by instituting new policies that affect one of these two things. Okay, we don't want to make people's lives worse. We want to genuinely help them. And so this is sort of where I think Richard Wagner, an economist at George Mason University, is correct when he said in one of his books from the 80s, which is called To Promote the General Welfare, he said that the central issue of public assistance has been how to provide for humane treatment of those whom we regard as genuinely unfortunate, without at the same time extending that provision to those who are merely improvident, foolish, lazy, or cunning. And so basically what he says is that we want to help people who truly need it, but not enable people to merely take advantage of the system. And that's sort of been the puzzle of sort of welfare programs or public assistance programs, is to make sure that we are helping the people that genuinely need it, but not enabling people to merely take advantage of the system. Okay, and so that concludes sort of our talk on unemployment. So next week we will get into some new material as well.